Alrighty, Insane Sam here, and on this video I'm going to tell you all about Bonnie and Clyde all along Route 66. Bonnie and Clyde were a team of Depression-era bandits who robbed gas stations, grocery stores, and an occasional bank. They were friends with Pretty Boy Floyd and Babyface Nelson, and they were contemporaries of John Dillinger. They were glamorized in the 1967 movie Bonnie and Clyde, but they weren't so glamorous in real life. Bonnie Parker was born in 1910 in Rowena, Texas, which is a small town southwest of Dallas. In 1925, during her second year in high school, she met a guy named Roy Thornton. She dropped out of school and married him a week before her 16th birthday. They had a troubled marriage and they split in 1929. They never saw each other again, but they never divorced, and Bonnie was wearing her wedding ring when she died. Clyde Barrow was born in 1909 in Tellico, Texas, which is a small town in southeast of Dallas. His first arrest was in 1926 for failing to return a rented car. A series of arrests followed during the following years, and he wound up in Easton Prison Farm in 1930. He led a violent life at Easton, but he was paroled in 1932. He quickly returned to crime, focusing on small robberies, but his weapon of choice was the Browning automatic rifle. Bonnie met Clyde in 1930 at the home of a mutual friend. They were attracted to each other immediately. Soon after they met, Clyde went to prison for burglary. He escaped using a gun Bonnie had smuggled into him. He soon was captured and returned to prison, but Clyde was paroled in 1932. Now, 1932 was a big year for the Barrow gang. Bonnie and Clyde participated in several robberies and killings, and on Christmas Day, a new gang member, W.D. Jones, was initiated into the gang when he and Clyde killed a man in Temple, Texas, while stealing his car. Bonnie and Clyde operated all over the Midwest, so it's no surprise they'd wind up on Route 66. In late 1932, Bonnie and Clyde were hiding out at a motor court in Carthage, Missouri. Carthage residents claimed the hideout was at White's Motor Court, which was opened on Route 66 in 1927 as a motel, gas station, and cafe. They pulled off a series of robberies in the Carthage area. Now, White's Court Motel is now called the Red Rock Apartments, and it's still there. In January 1933, in Springfiels, Missouri, they're having some wrestling matches at a local Shriners Mosque. Motorcycle policeman Tom Purcell spotted a car with two men and a woman who appeared to be scoping out cars. Purcell pulled the car over, but when he approached, Clyde or W.D. Jones stepped out of the car with a shotgun and told Purcell to get in. Now, Bonnie and Clyde sometimes would kidnap local residents so they could get guided out of town after a robbery, and that's why they grabbed Purcell. They sped through several towns, including Webb City and Joplin, looking for some stuff to steal. They wound up releasing Purcell. When recounting the incident to local papers, Purcell said that during the ride, Bonnie chain-smoked cigarettes, and she, Clyde, and W.D. constantly used profane language. Purcell claimed upon his release he asked for a return of his handgun, and Clyde told him, don't push your luck, buddy. In March 1933, Buck Barrow got pardoned out of jail for prison. He and his wife, Blanche Barrow, quickly joined Bonnie and Clyde and the rest of the gang, where they were hiding out in an apartment on what's now 34th Street in Joplin, Missouri. This is only about a mile off Route 66. Local residents informed the police about suspicious activity over there, and on April 13th, a five-man squad armed with handguns went to the apartment expecting to find some bootleggers. Boy, were they wrong. The Barrow gang was armed with Browning automatic rifles, and two of the policemen were killed. Bonnie laid down covering fire as the gang went into the garage to get into their getaway car. Clyde burst right through the garage doors. Bonnie and Blanche ran to the street and jumped into the car at the very last minute. Bonnie, Clyde, Buck, and W.D. all were wounded, but the gang escaped. But they left all their possessions behind. These possessions included a bunch of weapons, a now famous poem Bonnie had written called Suicide Sal, and a camera with a few rolls of film. The Joplin Globe newspaper developed the film, and it turned out they had these now famous photos of Bonnie and Clyde brandishing weapons, and the photo of Bonnie posing in front of a car smoking a cigar and holding a pistol. This apartment in Joplin is still there, and it can be rented through Airbnb for about $100 a night. I've never done it, but it gets pretty good reviews. In July 1933, the Barrow gang was discovered at the Red Crown Tourist Court in Platte City, Missouri. Police armed with automatic weapons raided the hideout. The gang made a daring escape, but Buck received a severe head wound. 5 days later, the gang was surrounded at a camp near Dexter, Iowa. There was a gunfight there too, and Bonnie, Clyde, and W.D. Jones all escaped on foot, but Buck was shot in the back and Blanche was captured. Buck died 5 days later. Things weren't going well for Bonnie and Clyde at all. They were on the run and hiding was getting increasingly difficult. They'd been holed up in a northeastern Oklahoma place and committed a series of petty robberies along Route 66 in the towns of Pryor, Afton, and Miami. On April 6, 1934, in Commerce, Oklahoma, Constable Cal Campbell and Police Chief Percy Boyd went to the corner of East 60 Road and Tahoe Avenue to investigate a suspicious car. They thought they were going to find a bunch of drunks. Instead of finding a bunch of drunks, Clyde gang member Henry Methvin came out of the car firing an automatic weapon. Campbell was killed and Boyd was wounded in the head. Several townspeople saw all this, but none of them interfered. Bonnie and Clyde got away and they kept Boyd as a hostage. Boyd later claimed that the Barrows treated him very nicely and that Bonnie helped dress his wounds. He eventually was released in Fort Scott, Kansas. They gave him a clean shirt, a few dollars, and told him, "Tell the world that Bonnie doesn't smoke cigars." Apparently she was really upset about that photo. Cal Campbell was the last person known to have been killed by the Barrow gang. There's a monument to Cal Campbell in front of the Commerce City Hall on Mickey Mantle Boulevard. A little over a month after Cal Campbell's murder, on May 23, 1934, Bonnie and Clyde were killed in an ambush while they were driving in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. Over 130 rounds pierced the car, and the bodies were so bullet-ridden that embalming was difficult. Bonnie was 24 years old and Clyde was 25. 1934 had been a bad year for gangsters. John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson, and Bonnie and Clyde all were killed. Clyde's buried in the Barrow family plot next to his brother Buck in the Western Heights Cemetery in Dallas. Bonnie's buried across town in northwest Dallas at Crown Hill Memorial Park. Blanche wound up getting sentenced to 10 years in the Missouri Penitentiary for assault with the intent to commit murder. She served six years. Blanche died of cancer in 1988 at the age of 77. Her memoir, My Life with Bonnie and Clyde, was published posthumously. She's buried in the Grant Hill Memorial Park in Dallas. W.D. Jones eventually left the Barrow gang and moved to Houston. He was in jail when Bonnie and Clyde were killed. He later was convicted of murder and received a 15-year sentence in the Huntsville prison in Texas. He eventually was killed in Houston in August 1974 when breaking into a friend's home at 3:55 in the morning. All that's kind of wild. Somehow I always thought all those 1930s gangsters had died well before my lifetime, but I graduated from college in '77. Bonnie and Clyde had a mystique around them during their own lifetimes that remains today, but there was nothing romantic about them. They were petty thieves who killed at least 13 people, including 9 policemen. Often they killed just for the sake of killing. Still, it's alluring to visit the sites of their misdeeds, and it's fun to think about that mystique of Bonnie and Clyde today. You can visit a lot of those sites on Route 66 when you're exploring it. Insane Sam out.